Something I've come to love about the NBA draft is that each year has a vibe of its own. Let me explain. Some are pretty easy to pin down. 2003? Historic, despite some ugly fashion choices. 2000, trash. Other draft classes are more of a mixed bag. While the world dealt with the loss of a legend, plenty of talent was about to enter the NBA in 2016. We're talking all-stars, all-NBA teamers, and champions. At the same time, they weren't all destined for greatness. There were a lot of guys who were out of the league within like a year or two. So what actually defines a draft? The best or the busts? Well guys, it's 7 years later, and it's time to look back. From players who escaped from war-torn countries all the way to career-ending missed layups. Here's what actually happened to everyone from the 2016 draft.
The Philadelphia 76ers select Ben Simmons from Melbourne, Australia, and Louisiana State University.
Prior to the draft, Ben Simmons was seen by many as the next LeBron. Ben dominated youth basketball in Australia before moving to Florida in 2013 to play against tougher competition. A five-star prospect at Montverde Academy, Simmons chose to sign with LSU. A preseason top 25 team, the 2015 Tigers had national title hopes, but they were off. They fell way short of expectations, missing the NCAA tournament. Despite some academic issues, Simmons did put up great numbers. Nobody was surprised when Ben declared for the draft that spring. He was a no-brainer pick for the Sixers. Sure, there were a few character concerns at LSU, but the talent was hard to ignore. This was the man who would lead Philly out of the process towards the promised land. Almost immediately, excitement turned to sadness. Days before Philly's first game, Ben broke his foot, forcing him to miss the entire 2016-17 season. The following season, he put up numbers immediately, averaging 15 points per game, 8 assists, and 8 rebounds as a rookie. Well, sort of. Not everyone thought Simmons should qualify for Rookie of the Year because it wasn't his first year in the NBA, just his first playing. I mean, very similar to players like Blake Griffin and even recently Chet Holmgren. Well, that year, Donovan Mitchell, Ben's top challenger for the award, stirred the pot with a pregame sweatshirt that had a dictionary definition of a rookie. But it didn't matter. Voters gave Simmons the award, the 76ers reached the playoffs for the first time since 2012, and things were going great in Philadelphia. That was until the Celtics came to town. Ben put up just 1 point on 4 shots in Game 2, and the Sixers got knocked off in 5 games, giving them an early vacation in Cancun. The Sixers became a constant postseason threat, even though Ben hadn't developed into an elite scorer. Compared to Joel Embiid, who had become one of the best scoring bigs in the league, Simmons hadn't progressed much. Playoff struggles became a trend for Philly. They got swept in the bubble by the Celtics, but that was with Ben Simmons hurt. The real embarrassment would come in 2021. In the divisional round, the Sixers got upset in 7 by the Hawks. During the series, Ben's passiveness became legendary. In 5 of the 7 games, he didn't take a single shot in the fourth quarter. And late in Game 7, Simmons famously passed up a wide-open layup to Matisse Thybulle, of all people. The play immediately became a meme, and as of now, it's what defines his career. Frustrated by what he saw as a lack of support from the Sixers, especially Embiid and head coach Doc Rivers, Ben requested a trade. But finding another team to take on an often injured and often upset player on a huge contract, that's a tough ask. After half a season holdout that saw more drama with Embiid, a suspension, and the most fines in NBA history, the 76ers finally agreed to a trade with the Nets in February to bring in James Harden, another genius move by the Sixers. It's been more of the same for Simmons in Brooklyn. He stayed away from the drama, but he hasn't been able to stay on the court, playing in just 48 games over the past 3 seasons. Hopefully, Ben can return to form, but I doubt he ever reaches his true potential. It's hard to think about anything like the Simmons saga in NBA history. We've seen #1 picks fall many times, but that wasn't the case here. Ben came out the gate strong. I mean, he made 2 all-star teams, 2 all-defensive teams, and even an all-NBA team. But at the end of the day, it never felt like he had the drive to take his game to the next level. Combine that with absolutely awful shooting, except in the summer, but even with that, it's hard to feel great about his future.
The Los Angeles Lakers select Brandon Ingram from Duke University.
Brandon Ingram may not be the best member of his draft class, but he might be the most lethal. Growing up in Kinston, North Carolina, Ingram says that his dad, Donald, and family friend Jerry Stackhouse took his game to another level. Stack, a 2-time All-Star, helped Ingram reach 5-star status as his AAU coach, leading to a scholarship offer from Duke in 2015. With the Blue Devils, Brandon continued to dominate, averaging 17.3 points per game as a freshman. At only 18 years old, he was just what the 17-win Lakers needed with the 2nd pick of the draft. In LA, Ingram didn't light the world on fire. He averaged just over 9 points as a rookie, starting just 40 games. But Brandon kept getting better. By his 3rd season in LA, he was already one of the best young wings in the league, with plenty of room to get better. The problem was that the Lakers weren't rebuilding anymore. With LeBron on board, their mindset was win now. and that meant finding the king a co-star. With Anthony Davis unhappy in New Orleans, LA made a trade to ship Ingram and others to the Big Easy. Since then, Brandon's had a decent amount of personal success, including an all-star selection in 2020, but injuries have held him back, and that's made Ingram's partnership with Zion Williamson, another guy that can't stay healthy, so frustrating. Ingram's a hard guy to pin down. He entered the draft with KD comparisons, but since then, he's been on a similar trajectory to DeMar DeRozan, a steady mid-range scorer that may not be able to lead a team on his own. Wait, hold up, that doesn't mean Ingram isn't a great player. It's just tough to suddenly see him becoming a superstar in his late 20s.
The Boston Celtics select Jaylen Brown from the University of California, Berkeley.
It's hard to imagine now, but the Celtics left many scratching their head when they took Jaylen Brown with the 3rd pick. The Cal wing entered the draft as a defense-first prospect with plenty of athleticism, which made him a natural fit for the Brad Stevens scheme. However, fan reaction was mixed, as Brown wasn't viewed as someone that should be taken to start the lottery. At first, the naysayers appeared to be right. Brown didn't make much of a splash as a rookie, but by the end of year 2, it was clear the Celtics had something special on their hands. As the years went on, Jaylen's offensive game took off. By 2021, he was an all-star averaging just under 25 points per game. He could have blossomed into a stat stuffer on another team, but Jaylen's two-way play paired with Jason Tatum created a tough team to beat by 2022. That's not to say everything's been perfect for Jaylen in Beantown. He was almost traded for Kevin Durant in the summer of 2022, and that was something he was not very happy about. On the court, a Celtics team favored to win the title suffered a brutal 7-game loss to the Heat, and the series exposed Brown's biggest flaw, his left hand.
Brown full steam ahead, Strusel to end. With a deceptive move,
he turned the ball over 8 times, becoming the symbol of a wasted Celtics season. There was a silver lining to 2023 for Jaylen though. His selection to the All-NBA second team qualified him for a Supermax extension of $304 million last summer, making him the highest paid player in the league. JB stays active off the court too, on a number of social justice issues. That's not much of a surprise for someone that was once called too smart for the league. He's spoken at MIT, Harvard, and his alma mater, Cal, on topics including tech, civil rights, and his own experiences as a black athlete, as well as his Juice Foundation, which partners with social change leaders to bridge the opportunity gap for youth in underdeserved communities. The league is in good hands with players like Jaylen committed to using their platform for change.
The Phoenix Suns select Dragan Bender from Croatia.
In 2015, plenty of people laughed at the Knicks when they took Kristaps Porzingis with the 4th overall pick. And off the rip, KP proved everyone wrong. The Suns must have thought, if one bad team can find success with a European big man, then why can't we? Well, it turns out the draft isn't that simple. The 7-foot Bender has been playing basketball since he was 15, all across Europe. And by the time he declared for the draft at 19, he was an Israeli Basketball League all-star. However, unlike KP, Bender was more of a passer than a shooter, a trait that certainly impacted his future in the NBA. A combination of bad play and poor health would doom Dragan. After 3 seasons with the Suns, it was clear that it wasn't going to work out. Phoenix declined Bender's 4th-year team option, and he signed a 2-year deal with the Bucks in 2019. After playing 7 games with Milwaukee, Bender was waived, and besides a brief 9-game stint with the Warriors later that season, he'd never play in the NBA again. Dragan would return to Israel in 2020 with his old team, Maccabi Tel Aviv, but in the 2nd year of his contract, he suffered a season-ending injury. As of now, he's playing for Mombas Obradoiro of the Spanish Liga ACB. Bender had his moments where he flashed some potential, but you can't sugarcoat it. He just wasn't that guy in the NBA.
The Minnesota Timberwolves select Chris Dunn from Providence College.
Chris Dunn was a problem at Providence. The two-way guard wreaked havoc on offenses, averaging 2.2 steals per game over 4 seasons. It was only a matter of time before a lottery team fell in love with a two-way star. The Timberwolves had a history of drafting mediocre guards, but maybe Dunn could be the one to end that. Or maybe he would be traded within a year. With Tom Thibodeau coaching the Wolves, Minnesota was never going to lean on Dunn or any other rookie. Minnesota was looking to compete right away, so waiting on Chris to get better wasn't going to happen. The Wolves decided to make a big trade for Jimmy Butler, a move they'd come to regret pretty quickly. Now a Chicago Bull, Chris was given a much bigger role, eventually playing his way into the starting lineup. Sadly, Dunn's lack of an offensive game and the Bulls drafting Kobe White to essentially replace him that summer of 2019, combined with some brutal injury luck, prevented him from taking that next step. He'd signed with the Hawks in 2020, but health still held him back. And then an ACL tear ended Dunn's season after 4 games. Chris would bounce from G League to various NBA clubs, but it took until last season for him to find a home. The Jazz signed Dunn to a 10-day contract, but it would take just a month for them to offer him a contract for the following season. The guy who was never known as a shooter has now drained 45% of his threes over 42 games with the Jazz. Still, at his core, Dunn will always be a hard-nosed player. Just look at him pointing his finger right in Luka's face. It's hard to say if this was the right pick for the Wolves, who didn't really know what to do with Dunn when they drafted him. Could a better shooter been the move? Sure, but it doesn't really matter. Whoever they took was probably getting traded for Jimmy a year later.
The New Orleans Pelicans select Buddy Hield from Freeport, Bahamas, and the University of Oklahoma.
Before he was a dependable role player, Buddy Buckets was a young phenom. The Bahamas-born Field was far from the States, but he drew plenty of attention due to his sharp shooting. Buddy became a household name at Oklahoma, winning the Wooden Award and leading the Sooners to a Final Four as a senior. Although he was older than most prospects in the 2016 draft, Buddy was viewed as one of the safest picks a team could make due to his shooting and ability to hold his own on defense. So far, those projections have been about right. After the Pelicans took him 6th overall, Hield started off slow, as head coach Alvin Gentry only gave Buddy 20 minutes per game. Hield was traded to Sacramento that February as a part of a package for DeMarcus Cousins. The move put Buddy on one of the worst teams in the West, but it finally gave him an opportunity to start. Over 25 games with the Kings, Buddy's scoring average went up over 6 points, cementing himself as a core piece in Sacktown. That didn't mean much though. The Kings remained a bad team for a while, and Hield became a constant part of trade rumors. According to Sam Amick of The Athletic, the Lakers were very close to sending Kyle Kuzma and Montrezl Harrell to the Kings in 2021, but the trade never went through. Buddy was finally dealt the following year as part of the massive Halliburton-Sabonis trade, filling a role as a veteran on a young Pacers team. Indy actually looks like a playoff contender, and Buddy should be a major piece of the puzzle going forward. Other than his off-court drip, Buddy is pretty low-key, but that doesn't mean fans should sleep on him. He's got a real case as one of the greatest shooters ever. Don't believe me? He's currently the fastest player to reach 1,000 threes in NBA history, needing only 350 games.
The Denver Nuggets select Jamal Murray from Kitchener, Canada, and the University of Kentucky.
While Hield was the bigger name coming out of college, Murray would have been the better selection. I mean, this guy was literally trained to be an on-court assassin. Before he even reached kindergarten, the Canadian was practicing his dribble, and it's safe to say hard work paid off. Before he was an NBA champ, Murray was a difficult player to evaluate. A one-and-done freshman at Kentucky, Jamal dropped 20 points per game, but there were real concerns over his defense and shot selection. That's what made Denver the perfect landing spot. Murray would learn behind veterans, including Danilo Gallinari, Wilson Chandler, and Jameer Nelson. He'd also grow alongside a young core of Will Barton, Yusuf Nurkic, Gary Harris, and some guy named Nikola Jokic. And it didn't take long for Jamal to make an impact. He won the Rising Stars Game MVP and made the all-rookie second team despite starting only 10 times. Come 2017, Murray became a consistent starter and increased his scoring load compared to his rookie season. But regular season numbers really don't tell the full story. A few players in NBA history have elevated their game in the postseason the way Jamal has. Over 53 playoff games, he's averaged 25 points per game on 47% shooting. His performance in 2020 was legendary, earning him the nickname Bubble Murray. He'd play his best against the Jazz in round 2. Down 3-1 in the series, Denver rallied back to win in 7 largely thanks to Murray. He put up 31.6 points, 5.6 rebounds, and 6.3 assists against Utah, including 2 50-point games. During the bubble, Jamal also showed his off-court character. After a dominant Game 6, Murray's mind was on George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, both of whom were drawn on his shoes. It was a powerful reminder of issues outside of basketball and a testament to a player that used tragedy as motivation. Unfortunately, Jamal's career took a turn for the worse the following year. In a game against the Warriors in 2021, Murray tore his ACL, forcing him out of action for 2 seasons. It was a long road back, but the wait proved to be worth it. The Nuggets silenced all the doubters, winning 53 games and cruising to their first NBA title. Against Miami in the finals, Jamal even made history, joining LeBron, Magic, and MJ as the only players to average at least 20 points and 10 assists in the finals. It's hard not to think Murray has the talent to be a lead option, but he's one of the more unselfish scorers in the league, playing number 2 to Joker. Jamal knows his role and how to best help his team win, even at the cost of his own stats. And because of that, he's still waiting on his first All-Star game. But let me tell you, it's becoming harder to ignore the 26-year-old.
The Sacramento Kings select Marquise Chris from the University of Washington.
What's worse than drafting a not-so-good player at the top of the draft? Well, trading assets to draft another 4 picks later. It was not a good time to be a Suns fan. I will say, Phoenix wasn't the only team interested in Marquise Chris. The 6'9" forward from Sacramento was a quality 4-star prospect before committing to Washington in 2014, but definitely not a can't-miss guy coming out of high school. Marquise showed an ability to shoot the three, plenty of bounce, and had some promise as a ball handler in college, and his stock surged during the pre-draft process as a result. The Suns fell in love, sending the 13th and the 28th picks in the draft along with draft rights to Bogdan Bogdanovic to Sacramento in order to draft Chris. It wasn't all bad at first. I mean, he did make the all-rookie second team with decent averages of 9.2 points and 4.2 rebounds, but that didn't tell the whole story. Suns fans grew frustrated with Chris's mental mistakes, which included constant foul trouble, bad shot selection, and playing out of position on defense. Well, some of that is to be expected when you draft a 19-year-old, but the problems only seemed to get worse in year 2. Marquise's efficiency continued to plummet, and he eventually lost his starting role. Phoenix eventually pulled the plug and shipped Chris to Houston as part of a trade for Ryan Anderson. Since then, he struggled to make an impact on 4 other teams. Marquise has blessed us with some crazy moments over the years, including shoving Luka to the floor, but none beat his interaction in the playoffs with Bismack Biyombo while with the Mavs in 2022. The two got into a shoving match at the end of Game 5 that led to both being ejected.
And now words between Biyombo and Marquise Chris. Yeah, this is setting up. Chris. That's smart by the security personnel for both teams.
Yes, it is.
Much like Bender, Marquise Chris made sense. I mean, he had the size, the skills, and the opportunity to be great. Unfortunately, attitude issues, a lack of improvement, and a poorly run franchise ruined his career. What makes things even worse for the Suns is that there were all-star forwards taken later. Has any team had a worse draft than the Suns in 2016? I mean, a few come to mind, but I want to see what you guys have to say in the comments.
The Toronto Raptors select Jakob Poeltl from Vienna, Austria, and the University of Utah.
Before attending Utah, Jakob Poeltl was a little-known prospect from Austria who made a name for himself in the 2013 Under-18 European Championships. By his sophomore year at Utah, he went from backup big to Pac-12 Player of the Year, averaging 17.2 points and 9.1 rebounds a night. With his stock on the rise, Jakob decided to go pro, hoping to become the first Austrian to play in the NBA, something I didn't know myself. The Raptors surprised many by taking him 9th since they already had Jonas Valanciunas at center. But the pick made sense. Toronto needed reliable depth, and the NBA-ready Poeltl became a valued member of Toronto's rotation in 2018. Still, he was a backup, and backups are expendable. Looking to make a win-now move, the Raptors shipped Poeltl along with DeMar DeRozan to the Spurs for Kawhi Leonard. While Jakob missed out on an epic championship run in 2019, he was eventually able to get starters minutes in San Antonio. By his age 25 season, the Austrian developed into a consistent double-double threat and a quality rim protector. But as Poeltl's game improved, the Spurs got worse. DeRozan left for Chicago, LaMarcus Aldridge got old, and San Antonio soon went from mid to bad. After months of trade rumors, Jakob was finally traded to none other than the Raptors. Although the team missed the playoffs, Jakob's solid play earned him a 4-year, $80 million deal this summer to stay in Toronto. So far this season, he's put up a decent 10.6 points and 8.1 rebounds per game on a league-leading 73% from the field. There were better players and better bigs taken in this draft, but I don't think Toronto can say that they regret this pick. I mean, without Poeltl, they never get Kawhi, and they never get a ring.
The Milwaukee Bucks select Thon Maker.
Thon Maker. Oh man, before we dive into Thon's career, it's important to remember that Thon is a real-life success story. Born in Sudan, he escaped civil war as a boy with his brother and aunt, eventually making his way to Australia. Thon would bounce around a bunch between the US, Canada, and Australia, but it was clear he had a future in basketball at 7 feet tall with some nasty highlight reels. Several big-time college programs even reached out to Maker, but he wanted to do something different. Since Thon had reportedly spent 5 years in several different high schools, he believed he should be able to skip college. After convincing the NBA he was draft eligible. So with all this happening before the NBA, how did his career turn out? Thon was the enigma of the 2016 class. The only thing everyone seemed to agree on was that he'd be a long-term project. Maker's basketball IQ and thin frame were questioned, but the biggest red flag was his age. Leading up to the draft, it was reported that some teams were refusing to draft Maker since they believed he was at least 21 and not 19. Thon's stock began to plummet, but the Bucks were unfazed, grabbing him inside the lottery with the 10th pick. It's easy to laugh at now, but Milwaukee had just seen a raw, untested teenager turn into a superstar. I mean, can you really blame them for trying to make lightning strike twice? Well, maybe, because Thon just didn't excel at anything. Almost from the jump, he got lost in the shuffle on a Bucks team that was starting to contend. With so much of his game to work on, Thon Maker needed minutes to get better. But Milwaukee needed wins to get better. So putting it together, it just wasn't going to work out. Still, Thon had his supporters. In 2017, Kevin Garnett worked with Maker in the offseason and came away very impressed. KV said that one day, young Thon would be an MVP. Yeah, that's right, an MVP. The guy who would be out of the league quicker than Jake Layman was going to be crowned Most Valuable Player. After he was traded to the Pistons in 2019, Don would play 3 more years in the league before playing in Israel, the G League, and China, where he's currently a member of the Fusion Sturgeons. He's also played internationally for Team Australia and took part in the legendary Aussie-Philippines Brawl of 2019. Just imagine being in the middle of all these bodies when a dude comes flying out of nowhere, knee first. Absolute insanity. The Bucks took a big swing on a player they saw as a lottery pick, and they missed. Badly. It won't haunt Milwaukee because they'd win it all a few years later. But this was a head-scratching decision on draft night.
The Orlando Magic select Domantas Sabonis from Kaunas, Lithuania, and Gonzaga University.
Domantas Sabonis grew up with basketball greatness in the family. Son of the legendary Arvydas Sabonis, Domantas grew up in Portland watching his dad play on some loaded Trailblazers teams. Once Papa Sabonis retired in 2004, the entire family moved to Spain. At just 16 years old, Domantas would play in the Spanish league with Unicaja Malaga. After 2 years, Sabonis could have made some serious money playing in Spain. But his goal was to play in the NBA. And to do that, Sabonis knew he needed to play college basketball in the States. He committed to Gonzaga and played 2 seasons for Mark Few, going from bench player as a freshman to double-double machine as a sophomore. With an NBA pedigree and advanced rebounding skills, Sabonis made sense for a win-now team such as the Thunder, who acquired him as part of a draft night package from Orlando for Serge Ibaka. Domantas began his rookie season as a starter, but slowly lost his role after OKC traded for Taj Gibson. After playing 6 total minutes in the playoffs, Sabonis and Victor Oladipo were traded to Indiana for Paul George in 2017. In Indy, Domantas would emerge as one of the league's top power forwards, dominating defenses with strength and finesse in the post. Sabonis averaged 16.3 points and 10.5 rebounds over 5 seasons with the Pacers, but the team was never able to build a true contender around him. That didn't mean people were shocked when Domantas was shipped to Sacramento in 2022 for Tyrese Halliburton, Buddy Hield, and Tristan Thompson. It was a move that some considered a mistake due to Hallie's massive upside, but Sabonis wasted no time balling out in Sacktown. Last season, he put up over 19 points along with a league-leading 12.3 rebounds as the Kings made the playoffs for the first time in 17 years. Although the Kings lost the series in 7, the future is bright for Domantas. Fresh off his first All-NBA season, he inked a new extension with the franchise this summer, potentially keeping him in Sacramento for the next 5 years. I'm not sure if he was the best player in this draft class, but you could argue at pick 11, he was a steal.
The Utah Jazz select Taurean Prince from Baylor University.
At pick 12, we have Taurean Prince. The Texas-born baller overcame a lot in life, including being homeless for a time as a kid. He went from being 5'9" as a high school freshman to 6'7" as a senior, eventually earning a scholarship at Baylor. From there, Taurean put in work. Over 4 years, he went from bench player to leading scorer while making a name for himself. Always a low-key guy, Prince did give us one of the greatest press conference answers of all time after his Bears were upset by Yale in the NCAA tournament.
36-32. How does Yale out-rebound Baylor?
You go up and grab the ball off the rim when it comes off, and then you grab it with 2 hands, and you come down with it, and that's considered a rebound. So they got more of those than we did.
Taurean was a modern kind of player. He had good sides, could defend multiple positions, and had a decent shot from behind the arc. So it's no surprise he stuck around for 8 years in the league. The Hawks, who traded for Prince 2 weeks after the draft, sent him to the D-League several times as a rookie to develop his game, but they rewarded him with a starting job the following season. Following 1 more season in Atlanta, Prince spent time with the Nets, Cavs, and Timberwolves before signing with his current team, the Lakers. A professional at every stop, there's not much to say here other than this is the kind of player that makes every team better.
The Phoenix Suns select Yorgos Papagiannis.
After playing basketball professionally in his home country of Greece since he was 14, Yorgos Papagiannis opted not to sign with the college program and entered the draft. At over 7 feet and 275 pounds, he was a bit of a throwback. Papagiannis had some post moves and was pretty efficient, but as you could guess from his size, he played at a pretty slow pace. Most mocks had Yorgos going late in the 2nd round or even undrafted as a long-term project. But the Kings and then general manager Vlade Divac must have seen something they liked. Sacramento took a chance and drafted the Greek big man with a 13th overall pick. While we didn't know much about Yorgos in 2016, his dad Canelos did make a name for himself due to his constant tweets about Dragan Bender. That's right, Yorgos' dad was a troll. And when I say troll, this guy was tweeting about Dragan like it was his full-time job. And guess what? This random beef made its way onto the court. In 2017, Dragan and Yorgos got into it when the Kings and Suns faced off, and Papa G was fired up. I mean, just look at that head roll. Unfortunately, that was easily the most memorable moment of Yorgos' career. He only played in a total of 38 games over 2 seasons before he was waived by the Kings, another failed center drafted by Sacktown. After suiting up just once for the Trailblazers, Papa G was out of the NBA. Since then, the big man returned to Panathinaikos, his old club in Greece, and even won a championship with legendary coach Rick Pitino in 2019. Papagiannis now plays for Fenerbahce in the Turkish league.
The Chicago Bulls select Denzel Valentine from Michigan State University.
Denzel Valentine was a big deal coming out of college. A 4-year star at Michigan State, Valentine came into the draft fresh off winning the Big Ten and Associated Press Player of the Year awards, putting up 19.2 points per game on great efficiency. However, as we've seen with guys like Doug McDermott and JJ Redick, sharpshooters in college can only go so far in the NBA without elite athleticism. It's not like the league didn't know this. Denzel was never really projected as anything more than a 3-and-D guy, which made perfect sense for a Bulls team that needed help on the wings. Denzel spent time in the D-League as a rookie, playing in only 57 games off the bench for the Bulls. He showed signs of improvement in year 2, including a 34-point game against the Cavs, but it would be short-lived. A knee injury forced Valentine out of action for the entire 2018-19 season, and he didn't get any better. In fact, he actually got worse. Over his next 2 injury-filled years in Chicago, Denzel shot just below 39% from the field. His shot selection was insane, to the point that even the Bulls announcer began to call out his insane heat checks.
No. Oh my goodness, Valentine! Whoa, no! That is
Valentine would spend one last year with the Cavs and Jazz before playing for the G League's Maine Celtics in 2022. As of now, he's playing for the Sydney Kings in Australia. I guess the takeaway here is that college stars don't always pan out. I won't make it seem like Bulls fans are calling Valentine the next MJ, but there was an expectation that he'd have a high floor, which was not the case. But what other college stars struggled in the NBA? I have a couple, but what do you guys have in mind? Let me know in the comments.
The Denver Nuggets select Juan Hernan Gomez from Madrid, Spain.
At pick 15, we have Juancho Hernan Gomez to the Nuggets. Unlike other Euro hoopers, Hernan Gomez was already a familiar name for fans due to his brother Willie, who entered the league a year earlier. The Spaniard had been playing competitively since he was a teen. Following 5 years under the contract with CB Estudiantes, Hernan Gomez followed in his older brother's steps and declared for the draft. Despite being 6'9", Juan's athleticism, shooting, and energy made him an attractive fit for most teams, although he had plenty of room for improvement on defense. Although he certainly had his moments and some impressive dance moves, it was tough for Hernan Gomez to establish himself on a loaded Denver squad. He was traded to the Timberwolves in 2020 and would spend time with the Celtics, Spurs, Jazz, and Raptors. While Juan never broke out in the association, he's dominated with the Spanish national team. Along with big bro Willie, Hernan Gomez helped lead Spain to a win in Eurobasket 2022, even winning the title game MVP against France. As of 2023, he's playing for it, you guessed it, Panathinaikos in Greece. They must be big fans of this draft. We might not see Juan play in the NBA again, but he's got a solid backup plan as an actor. He starred alongside Adam Sandler in the Netflix film Hustle, earning plenty of praise for his role as Spanish-born baller Bo Cruz. Although, if I'm being honest, I think Anthony Edwards stole the show.
The Boston Celtics select Gershon Yabusele from Dreux, France.
Welcome everyone. I'd like to show off our first contestant of the Players' Names I Can't Pronounce game show. And speaking of that, it's probably time to speed things up, because the next 3 teams really missed the mark. Gershon Yabusele grew up the son of immigrants from the Democratic Republic of Congo, living in France. Eventually, he'd earn a roster spot on Rouen Metropole Basket of the LNB Pro A, France's top league. With a 7'1" wingspan, Yabusele had the look of a power forward. But the reality was that he was still very raw. The Celtics drafted him with the 16th pick, but they knew he'd need to develop and get his body in NBA shape. Without a need for Gershon on the roster, Boston allowed him to play a year in China with the Shanghai Sharks, while keeping his draft rights. He'd returned to the US in 2017, splitting time between the Celtics and the Maine Red Claws in the D-League. The Dancing Bear did become a fan favorite in Beantown, despite playing in just 74 NBA games. During the summer of 2019, Boston waived Yabusele, and he returned to China with the Nanjing Monkey Kings. Since then, Gershon has played in France and Spain. And I don't know if you guys heard about it or seen this yet, but Gershon also made his way into the WWE.
Come on now, this isn't what we want. This is not what we want.
This was the second of 8 picks for the Celtics, and it might have been the worst. Yabusele made sense as a long-term project for a deep roster, but Boston already had a 4 that needed better conditioning in Jared Sullinger. Could the Celtics have added a better player? Sure, but they definitely weren't the only team in this draft to swing and miss.
The Memphis Grizzlies select Wade Baldwin IV from Vanderbilt University.
With the 17th pick, the Grizzlies select Wade Baldwin IV from Vanderbilt. The guard played 2 seasons with the Commodores, averaging 14.1 points, 5.2 assists, and 1.2 steals as a sophomore before declaring for the draft. Baldwin's reputation was that of a defensive stopper with the kind of length teams are looking for to guard the perimeter. Wade played in just 33 games with Memphis in a reserve role, but that didn't mean he lacked talent. Baldwin's biggest setback may have been off the court. During training camp the summer after being drafted, Grizzlies head coach David Fizdale said the rookie needed to be a better teammate. Even Mike Conley said he acted too cool at times. He'd last a year with the franchise before being released. Although he did improve his attitude, Memphis waived Wade after just 1 year. He'd spent some time with Portland, including a random duel with James Harden, before getting traded in 2019. And by traded, I don't mean once. Baldwin was dealt 3 times in 5 days. Let me break it down. He'd go from the Trailblazers to the Cavs on February 3rd, then to the Rockets on the 6th, only to get shipped to the Pacers the very next day. 8 minutes later, Baldwin was waived by the Pacers. As of 2023, he has not been on an NBA roster. He's bounced all around Europe though ever since, balling in Greece, Germany, Spain, and Israel.
The Detroit Pistons select Henry Ellenson from Marquette University.
Henry Ellenson's career is a tale as old as the NBA, someone who thrived at every level until he reached the pros. A former Wisconsin Mr. Basketball winner in high school, Ellenson committed to Marquette as a 5-star prospect. With the Golden Eagles, Henry continued to put up buckets, averaging 17 points and 9.7 rebounds as a freshman. The guy even went toe-to-toe with Jimmy Buckets in a game of one-on-one. Seen as a potential stretch 4 in the league, the big concern for Ellenson was his lack of speed and rim protection on the defensive end. Unfortunately, this would prevent him from ever sticking around at the highest level. The Pistons selected Ellenson with the hopes of developing him with the Grand Rapids drive. While Henry put up numbers in the D-League, he'd never carve out a role in Detroit, averaging 3.8 points on 36% shooting and 59 games with the team. A few brief stops with the Knicks, Nets, and Raptors followed until Ellenson ended up in Spain with Monbas Obradorio. Today he's rostered on club Juventud Badalona.
The Denver Nuggets select Malik Beasley from Florida State University.
Finally, a productive NBA player. That doesn't mean it was a typical road to the league for Malik Beasley. He may have been the son of a professional player, but hoops weren't necessarily a priority for Malik. As a high school freshman and sophomore, he was more focused on baseball and football. Things suddenly changed in his junior year, which probably had to do with growing 7 inches. Malik's work ethic took off, and he turned into a 4-star prospect with a scholarship from Florida State. After 1 season, Beasley declared for the draft. While he didn't make much of an impact in Denver, they had the right idea by grabbing a much-needed shooter for a team that struggled from 3-point range. Malik played a minimal role on the team until the 2018-19 season, when he averaged 11.3 points to go along with 40% shooting from 3. Still, it wasn't enough to save his roster spot. Beasley, along with fellow Nuggets first-rounder Juancho Hernan-Gomez, was dealt to the T-Wolves at the 2020 trade deadline in a massive 12-player trade. With the Wolves, Malik had an extended role that allowed him to operate as a focal point of the offense, although he did begin to take plenty of shaky shots. Outside of basketball, Beasley also made some questionable decisions. That September, he was charged with threatening a family with a gun when they accidentally pulled up to his house, leading to a 120-day jail sentence and a 12-game suspension. In 2022, Beasley was traded again, this time to Utah as part of their haul for the Rudy Gobert deal. The rebuilding Jazz didn't have much use for Malik and shipped him off to the Lakers at the trade deadline. In LA, Beasley didn't exactly thrive, shooting 39% from the field and slowly losing minutes as the season went on. Luckily for Malik, 2023 has been much better, as he signed with Milwaukee, which seems to be a much better fit for him.
The Indiana Pacers select Karis LeVert from the University of Michigan.
Back-to-back quality picks outside of the lottery? I'm getting just as shocked as you guys are. It's pretty remarkable that Karis LeVert is not only still in the league in 2023, but playing well. LeVert wasn't the most sought-after recruit, choosing to commit to Michigan in a bench role. But by the end of his time at school, he was putting up 16.5 points per game as a senior. The big problem for Karis' draft stock was injuries. LeVert had surgery on the same spot in his left foot over a span of 22 months, leading up to the 2016 draft, making him a gamble for any team that took him. That wasn't enough to scare off the Nets, who traded for his draft rights. Natural scoring ability combined with maximum effort quickly made Karis a fan favorite. By year 3 in Brooklyn, he had worked his way into the starting lineup. LeVert began to put up some monster games, including a 28-point outing against the Knicks. Unfortunately, Karis suffered a severe leg injury in November that saw him stretched off the court. While he would always be a factor on the hardwood, injuries remained a constant factor for LeVert during his time with the Nets. That made him expandable when Brooklyn decided to go all in on the beard in 2021. After landing with Indiana in the gigantic 4-team Harden deal, LeVert put up a career-high 20.7 points over 35 games in Indy. He continued to play well until the following winter, when he was traded once again, this time to the Cavs in exchange for Ricky Rubio and some picks. He's now an important piece of the puzzle for Cleveland, earning a new deal last summer as well. Even though the threat of injury is always there for Karras, he's one of the 2016 draft's top role players, and it's hard to think of any teams he wouldn't have helped.
The Atlanta Hawks select DeAndre Bembry from St. Joseph's University.
I guess we got spoiled with the last two picks, because the next group of players haven't done much since getting drafted. Still, we shouldn't be too harsh on DeAndre Bembry, who played 6 years in the league. A terrific player during his 3 years at St. Joe's, Bembry entered the draft as a do-it-all wing, capable of shooting as well as defending the perimeter. Tragically, DeAndre's brother Adrian was shot and killed trying to break up a fight just 2 weeks before the draft. In his honor, Bembry decided to wear the number 95. The Hawks snagged Bembry with the 21st pick, and it was a smart roster fit. Atlanta needed perimeter defenders, and DeAndre had earned a reputation for hustle plays on both ends of the floor during his college days. And I'll be honest, that's a pretty accurate scouting report. DeAndre was never the fastest or strongest player on the floor, but he gave 100%, and even frustrated a few big names. I mean, how many other guys can get Marcus Smart this angry? The good thing though is DeAndre did get plenty of runs in Atlanta. In 2019, he averaged 8.4 points and played all 82 games. The issue was that his shot was not up to par. Bembry hit just 27% of his three-pointers and shot an ugly 59% from the free throw line. The Hawks would let him leave once his rookie deal was up, and he played for the Raptors, Nets, and Bucks through 2022. Bembry was a flawed player, no doubt, but you had to give him props for sticking around as long as he did without being an offensive threat.
The Charlotte Hornets select Malachi Richardson from Syracuse University.
At pick 22, the Hornets grabbed Malachi Richardson, although they'd immediately trade the pick to Sacramento. Plenty of teams had some absolutely brutal drafts in 2016, but the Kings really messed up. They went high upside with all three of their first round selections and missed big each time. Richardson, at this spot in the draft, made more sense than taking Papagiannis inside the lottery, but that isn't saying much. Known as an inefficient shooter during his lone season at Syracuse, Malachi exploded in the NCAA tournament, leading the Orange to the Final Four. Suddenly, a guy most thought would stay in school another year was being mocked inside the first round. It's hard to turn down life-changing money, but Richardson's game was not ready for the NBA. He was a 37% shooter in college, and his shot selection didn't get much better at the next level. Malachi played in just 47 games over 2 seasons in Sacramento, held back by his poor shooting, the main reason he was drafted at all. The Kings traded Richardson to the Raptors in 2018. He'd spend one more season in the NBA before getting waived. He's currently on year 3 of playing in Poland after a few years in Israel, the G League, and Italy. Let's put it this way. This was a straight bust for the Kings, and it's impossible to say otherwise. Sure, it was a late first, and those usually don't pan out, but it's painful given a few of the names still on the board.
The Boston Celtics select Ante Zizic from Split, Croatia.
Born in Croatia, Zizic began hooping professionally in 2013, at first with several teams in his home country before playing in the Turkish league. At 6'11", with the ability to move across both ends of the floor, Zizic fit the model of a rim-running center, the kind of guy every team could use. Ante was initially picked up by the Celtics with the 22nd pick, and they intended to keep him until Kyrie asked out of Cleveland later that summer. Sensing an opportunity, Boston sent Zizic, Isaiah Thomas, Jay Crowder, and a first-round pick for Kyrie. It just never worked out for him in Cleveland. He split time between the big club and the G League, never becoming a consistent offensive threat or a dominant rebounder. Since leaving the NBA, Zizic has done a lot of winning across the world. He won the Israeli Cup with Maccabi Tel Aviv in 2021, and in 2023, he won the Turkish League with Anadolu Efes.
The Philadelphia 76ers select Timothé Luwawu-Cabarrot from Caen, France.
Even though I've heard his name plenty of times, I still don't get it right. So I'd like our next contestant to enter our game show. Players' names I can't pronounce. Overseas prospects are always a gamble, but I can't remember so many that didn't work out. Other than Pirtle and Sabonis, foreign first-rounders really didn't make an impact in this draft class, and TLC is no exception. Philly had gambled on upside before, so they decided to take a chance on the Frenchman with the 24th pick. Timothé did show flashes of greatness early on, but the 76ers were coming out of the process, and there just wasn't much room to grow. Philly sent TLC to the Thunder in 2018 as part of a 3-team deal. Outside of a productive season with the Nets in 2020, Timothé has never made a real impact. Over 6 seasons in the NBA, including with the Hawks and Bulls, he averaged 5.9 points on 39% shooting. TLC has enjoyed some success in the international game as a member of the French national team, as he put up 11 points in the gold medal game against the United States during the 2020 Olympics in Tokyo. Since getting cut by the Suns before the 2022 season, he's suited up for Olympia Milano in Italy and Asvel in France. Timothé had some great potential, but it was just never meant to be. A project like him always needed room to grow, and the Simmons and Embiid Sixers were poised to contend for a title. Maybe TLC could have worked out on a bad team, but I guess we'll never know.
The Los Angeles Clippers select Bryce Johnson from the University of North Carolina.
Bryce Johnson was a winner in college and even got his number retired at North Carolina. In the NBA, say the line, Bart, it just didn't click. On paper, Johnson had all the accolades you could want at Chapel Hill, but his older age and limited athleticism prevented him from rising up the draft boards. Still, the Clippers saw enough to use their only first-round selection on him at pick 25. The biggest issue for Bryce's NBA future was size. Unlike in college, being just over 200 pounds wasn't going to cut it at center, which made shooting ability a necessity. It's tough to really determine what went wrong for Johnson in the NBA because he only played 21 games in his entire career. The big takeaway was that he wasn't shooting threes, and he didn't offer much outside of the occasional block shot. Bryce was included as part of the Blake Griffin trade to Detroit in 2018, before being sent to Memphis over a week later. Johnson was eventually waived by the Grizzlies, and he hasn't played in America since. After leaving the NBA, Bryce has balled out just about everywhere, going from Puerto Rico to Italy to France to Ukraine, Japan, and Oman, where he currently plays for Al Sadd. I think this pick was doomed from the start. Plenty of college legends can't cut it in the NBA, and Johnson is one of the biggest examples of that. The Clippers did get a solid player out of this draft, but it wouldn't be Bryce.
The Philadelphia 76ers select Furkan Korkmaz from Turkey.
Fun fact time. Who are the only 4 players to still remain on the original teams they got drafted on? First one, Jaylen Brown. That's easy. Then we have Jamal Murray, obviously, and Pascal Siakam is still a Raptor, of course, for now. And then there's Furkan Korkmaz. Wait, what? For all of Philly's crazy twists and turns in recent years, the man from Istanbul has stuck around. Korkmaz was sought after due to his terrific shooting and ideal length at 6'7", but he needed experience at just 19. He debuted a year later in 2017, but spent most of the year playing in the G League. Frustrated without a roster spot, Korkmaz asked out of Philly, but nothing ever materialized. Korkmaz had a pretty solid stretch from 2019 to 2021, where he averaged 9.5 points per game to go with 39% shooting from the field. This was the peak though, and by February of 2023, he'd once again ask out of Philly. Yet somehow he's still there, appearing in 20 games this season. This man has outlasted Brett Brown, Ben Simmons, and Markelle Fultz. You can't get rid of him at this point.
The Toronto Raptors select Pascal Siakam from Douala, Cameroon, and New Mexico State University.
The Raptors struck gold at pick 27 with Pascal Siakam. The New Mexico State product traveled a long way from his hometown in Cameroon. As a teen, he turned down being a priest and eventually found his way to basketball. He'd begin to draw attention at Basketball Without Borders camp, impressing none other than Raptors president Maze Ujiri. Still, not many schools pursued Siakam, which made the Aggies an appealing choice for a college to attend. A monster sophomore year that saw Siakam average 20.3 points and 11.6 rebounds sent his draft stock skyrocketing. Pascal was still seen as a major gamble, but the hope was his shooting could catch up to his speed, agility, and solid defense. Spicy P didn't turn heads immediately. He slowly crept further up the Toronto depth chart, going from reserve as a rookie to the league's most improved player in 2019. The finals-winning Raptors probably didn't plan on it, but Kawhi Leonard's departure suddenly made Siakam a go-to option on offense, and he didn't disappoint. Over the next 5 years, Pascal would be named an All-Star twice, make 2 All-NBA teams, and average over 22 points per game. He's been more active off the court recently as both an activist and a brand. Last August, Siakam partnered with the University of New Brunswick to create a scholarship in his name that helped out students from Cameroon looking to study in technology programs. Siakam also teamed up with the McDonald's Canada to create the limited edition Siakam Swirl McFlurry, a combination of soft serve, hot fudge, and crushed Smarties. If anyone's tried one, let me know in the comments. Pascal hasn't cracked superstar status, but this is as good as it gets in the NBA draft. The Raptors don't win anything without him, and their current outlook as a franchise is much more uncertain. Toronto might need to consider moving on from Pascal in the future, but he's already delivered a major return on investment.
The Phoenix Suns select Skal Labissiere from Port-au-Prince, Haiti, and the University of Kentucky.
Skal overcame huge odds to make the NBA. As a teenager, Skal's family home collapsed during the 2012 Haiti earthquake, trapping him, his mom, and his brother inside. Somehow, all 3 survived, and Labissiere moved to Memphis as part of the Reach Your Dreams Foundation efforts to bring young athletes to America. While playing for the Reach Your Dream prep team, Skal absolutely dominated, putting up 26 points, 12 boards, and 4.5 blocks per game. Those kind of numbers at 6'10" make you a standout. Skal would get a scholarship from Kentucky and Coach Cal, who compared him to Anthony Davis. Unfortunately, he didn't come close to living up to the hype. While he may have been tall, Labissiere wasn't wasn't very strong, and it was clear he had a long way to go when it came to understanding the game. Once a projected lottery pick, Scal's freshman year knocked him all the way to the end of the first, where the Kings traded for his draft rights from the Suns. He had some shooting skills and even had some good games after the Kings got rid of DeMarcus Cousins in 2017, but ultimately Labissiere was still a negative on defense, making it tough for him to get a few more minutes a night. The Kings sent Scal to Portland in 2019, where he played 42 games over the next 2 seasons. Since 2020, he's been out of the league, but he's been balling in the G League, Puerto Rico, and Mexico. But that isn't the end of his story. Prior to the start of the 2023 season, he signed a deal to return to the Kings, who immediately assigned him to their G League team in Stockton. Maybe this is just the start of Scal's comeback to the NBA. Stay tuned for more. But of all the Kings' first-round picks, this one made the most sense. Labissiere's 1 year at Kentucky had plenty of red flags, but he was still an elite high school prospect for a reason. Unfortunately, he never really developed outside of his shooting, and the team left an all-star talent on the board, making this yet another failed draft pick for Sacramento.
The San Antonio Spurs select DeJounte Murray from the University of Washington.
DeJounte Murray may be the biggest success of this entire draft. Born into poverty in Seattle, he was exposed at a young age to crime, drugs, and gangs. Luckily, he began to develop some serious game in high school, while being mentored by Jamal Crawford. Despite a terrific freshman season at Washington, Murray's past may have caused his draft day slide. The Spurs weren't upset, as they got a major steal at pick 29. In San Antonio, DeJounte was your classic Spur, a tough, defensive-minded guard that played hard. He also wasn't afraid to get into it with other players. Despite a few setbacks, including an ankle injury that forced him to miss a whole year, Murray eventually broke out. In the 2021 through 2022 season, he averaged 21.1 points, 9.2 assists, 8.3 rebounds, and a league-leading 2 steals per game. I mean, some teams would build around a young player with those numbers. But the Spurs were ready to go into tank mode and choose to sell DeJounte while his value was high. In the summer of 2022, San Antonio shipped off Murray to the Hawks for Danilo Gallinari and a collection of future first-round picks. And since coming to Atlanta, we've seen a lot more of DeJounte's personality on the court, for better or for worse. He's earned a reputation for taking things a little too far, whether it's making contact with a ref or bumping the ball off of someone's head in a Pro-Am game. He's even got a beef going with fellow Seattle hooper Paolo Banchero, likely due to this play last offseason. Love him or hate him, it's clear Murray doesn't care about stepping on a few toes, and his play backs up his actions. As a Hawk, he's putting up over 20 points a night while finishing amongst the league leaders in steals per game. I mean, plenty of teams will regret passing on a do-it-all guy like Murray, so I can't just call out one team. At just 27, he's got plenty of time to cement himself as one of the best in the 2016 draft.
The Golden State Warriors select Damian Jones from Vanderbilt University.
Some guys last a while in the league, even if you barely know who they are, and that's Damian Jones, a former All-Star at Vanderbilt that's still in the league as of 2023. His strengths were pretty obvious in college. Jones could block shots and make his baskets efficiently. Jones has a boring career story for the most part, but I say this as a compliment. After the defending champion Warriors grabbed him to close out the first round, he played 3 years with the team, splitting time between Bay and the G League. That might seem like Jones would soon be out of the league, but that wasn't the case. Since getting traded to the Hawks in 2019, he's played for the Suns, Lakers, Kings, and Jazz. And at 28 years old, he's currently on the Cavs bench, making this 8 straight years in the league for Jones. Hold up, there are a few names worth mentioning outside of the first round. In fact, both of the guys I'm about to discuss should have been taken inside the lottery. But hindsight is 2020, right?
The Los Angeles Lakers select Ivica Zubac from Croatia.
At pick 32, the Lakers grabbed Ivica Zubac. The Croatian was sort of lost in the shuffle due to many European big men in this draft, but he's proven to be one of the best. After years in the Croatian league, Zubac broke out in 2015 at the FIBA Under-19 World Championship, leading his country to a silver medal. With a 7'4" wingspan, it was clear that Ivica had the physical tools to be a force on the defensive end, even if his offense needed work. Fresh off Kobe's retirement, the Lakers needed all the talent they could get, so they took a chance on Zoo in the second. Ivica would spend plenty of time in the G League as a rookie, but by his 3rd year with the team, he averaged 19.6 points and 11.3 rebounds per 36 minutes. With more playing time, it was clear the 21-year-old could become a problem. Clear to everyone but Rob Pelinka, that is. Out of nowhere, the Lakers dealt Zubac and Michael Beasley to the rival Clippers for Mike Muscala. LA's reasoning for trading away Ivica made little sense at the time, and has only continued to look worse over time. In fact, the deal was so bad, franchise legend Jerry West and the Clippers front office were reported to be laughing when the Lakers made that trade. But hey, I could think of some worse trades they made in the last 5 years. With the Clippers, Zubac was immediately giving a consistent starting role, and ever since he's averaged a solid 9.8 points and 8.4 rebounds over 6 seasons. Ivica also made some history along the way. In a 2022 game against the Pacers, he put up 31 points, 29 rebounds and 3 blocks. The first player to do so since Kareem in 1978. And he's not going to make an all-star team, but Zubac has become one of the game's better centers by the age of 26. And that's nothing to sneeze at. Lakers fans, at least you got a ring the year after letting him go, right?
The Milwaukee Bucks select Malcolm Brogdon from the University of Virginia.
I've talked about the dangers of drafting older prospects, but that doesn't mean it can't work. Look no further than Malcolm Brogdon, a 5-year guard out of Virginia who, like Bryce Johnson, also got his number retired. Viewed as a limited athlete coming into the draft, Brogdon wasn't the flashiest, but he was a winning player who made smart decisions on the court. That became clear quickly, as he averaged an efficient 10.2 points and 4.2 assists in just over 26 minutes per game as a rookie. Those numbers might not sound outstanding, but they were good enough to win Rookie of the Year, making Malcolm the first second-round pick to win the award since 1965. If that doesn't tell you all that this was a weak draft class, I don't know what will. Malcolm had plenty of moments over 3 years with the Bucks, including a rare 50-40-90 season in 2019. At just 26, you'd think re-signing Brogdon would be a priority, but health issues and a reluctance to pay the luxury tax led to the end of his time in Milwaukee. Malcolm signed with the Pacers, where he took the role of a leading scorer but was hampered by even more injuries. During his 3 seasons in Indiana, he'd never play in more than 56 games. With the Pacers rebuilding and Malcolm wanting to win, the front office offered him a choice of teams, the Celtics or the Raptors. Being the winner he is, Brogdon chose Boston, even though it meant he'd come off the bench. With so much attention on other star players, Brogdon was given freedom to run the second unit, putting up just under 15 points on 48% shooting. Those numbers, combined with Boston's 57 wins, gave Malcolm the edge in a close 6th man of the year race. You'd think winning an award would get you some job security, but that wasn't the case. The Celtics, coming off of a playoff upset by the Heat, went star shopping in the summer of 2023. That made Brogdon and his hefty salary the odd man out. After months of trade rumors, Boston finally sent the veteran to Portland as part of the Drew Holiday trade. It's probably only a matter of time before Brogdon is traded again, because his talents are currently being wasted on a rebuilding Blazers squad. Off the court, Malcolm is a true difference maker. His nonprofit, the Malcolm Family Foundation, focuses on addressing inequalities in gender, education, and health at home and globally. He's an NBA Players Association vice president, and by all accounts, one of the most respected players in the league. I came into making this video with an open mind about the draft. After all, there were plenty of impact players taken here, including some that will probably take their game even further. However, I can't ignore how many of these guys flamed out once they reached the NBA. In fact, the undrafted free agents aren't even that far off from those who were drafted. Names like Dorian Finney-Smith, Alex Caruso, Gary Payton II, and future All-Star Fred VanVleet were slept on by literally every front office. It just feels like a lot of teams just completely missed out on obvious talent, with some making multiple bad decisions in one night. But hey, we live and make mistakes, right? Nobody will make the right pick 100% of the time, and that's what makes the NBA draft so memorable. It's an opportunity at the end of the day, allowing people to change their family history forever and entertain millions of people. And there are plenty of players that take that opportunity and run with it. But sometimes that opportunity doesn't last as long as we expected. Kind of like players like Jeremy Lin or Roy Hibbert. One week, they're at the top of the NBA, and the next, they're out of the league. Well, what happened to those one-hit wonders? How did they rise and fall so quickly? Well, don't worry, because I have all of that covered for you in this video showing right here.